The desire to work in the capital cities of Europe was what Soviet intelligence agents most desired. They experienced the pleasures of living a Western lifestyle there and benefited from the extensive freedom. Vladimir Vetrov chose to join the KGB and receive training. Undercover the development of trade relations between the USSR and France, Vladimir Vetrov was appointed to Paris. There, he experienced a life that was distinct from that of the Soviet Union. It is the story of a Soviet agent recruited by French intelligence. A story of one Soviet spy, Vladimir Vetrov, who is ranked among the top spies of the Cold War, and among the most famous KGB men who betrayed their country for multiple motives, including the pursuit of financial gain. For the benefit of governments or organizations, they gather and analyze sensitive information. They carry out covert operations, infiltration, and other forms of surveillance to obtain information about prospective threats or to their advantage. Because of the often secretive nature of their employment, it calls for extreme discretion and professionalism. They could work covertly or assume different identities. They need a high level of skill, training, and mental toughness for their work, which can be dangerous. Their practice frequently involves emotional deceit and manipulation. Vladimir was born on October 10, 1931, in Moscow. He was born into a family belonging to a humble environment. His father, Hypod Vetrov, who died in 1970, was one of the warriors on the Leningrad front during the German invasion of Soviet territory. After that, he worked as a band leader in a propane manufacturing plant. He was a standout athlete in various sports during his time at school. And in 1951, when he turned 19, he enrolled at one of Moscow's engineering schools. His life and mentality underwent significant change in that year. He picked an electronics major. Vladimir Vetrov completed his 5.5-year training program. In 1957 he was hired as an engineer at a calculator machinery plant. He met Svetlana Barashkov on December 8 of that year. The first 2 years are quite typical. He applied to join the KGB in writing to the Moscow branch of the secret agency Soviet on July 8, 1959, during the summer of that year. He got admitted to the KGB because he was from the proletarian class and had an interest in electronics. He had to have gone to the Givinsky Academy, where he studied English, French, and espionage methods. After receiving his degree, he served as the chief engineer at the State Committee for Electronic Technology's Foreign Relations Department from September 1962 until August 1965. The incident that involved Yerlozenko, a KGB official who escaped to the United States of America, was still having effects at the time. Many of the KGB's agents, who had been revealed to the Americans by Yuri Yerlozenko, were forced to be recalled by the Secret Service Soviet. Vladimir Vetrov had a chance in that situation. At that time, intelligence agents were competing for appointments in Western capitals in order to experience what life was like there and make money by smuggling goods from the West, such as clothing, perfume, household goods, etc. Vetrov was fortunate, thus a decision was made to hire him abroad. His position in the development of trade relations between the Soviet Union and France at the Soviet Embassy in Paris served as a front for his primary objective, which was to spy on French business and technology. Vetrov had been working to establish a network of agents who can provide him with information about French technology or technical research ever since he arrived in Paris. He develops close relationships with engineers working in various French industries and, in exchange for cash, he had from them information, or part of the machinery that the French government is getting ready to sell. He forwarded the equipment and all the information he had collected to the KGB. The French Intelligence Service, DST, soon became aware of Vetrov's movements. They closely observed everything he did and hired one of his most devoted employees, a senior executive with the Thomson Company, for this position. Jacques Prévost is his name. Following a car accident in which the Vetrov car was severely damaged, the bond between Vetrov and Prévost quickly grew stronger. Prévost paid for the repaired car. This led Vetrov to feel he owed Prévost anything because Prévost kept him out of trouble with the Soviet embassy. In July 1970, it occurred during one of Vetrov's last duties in Paris, from which he later flew back to Moscow. He informed him of the need to destroy the Israeli digger whatever it costs. Vetrov had intended to be nominated as the KGB office's president in Marseille. However, Vetrov was not granted a visa by the French Foreign Ministry to enter France. French intelligence was making an effort to determine how many agents were working on French soil. It was not until the spring of 1974 that Vladimir Vetrov, a lieutenant colonel, was given a new position outside the Union Soviet. He pretended to be the top engineer at the Soviet trade mission in Montreal to get an assignment to Canada, but it only lasted 9 months. Vetrov started carrying on his chest hatred of the Soviet regime, and he believed that the Soviet doctrine, relative to then Soviet President Lionel Brezhnev, perpetuated technological backwardness in the Soviet Union, and pushed that socialist country to steal plans and equipment from the capitalists. He saw that it produced a state of absurdity and the indignity. But what will spark more hostility is disagreement between him and his boss. He was subjected by the Secret Service Soviet to an examination in February of 1975, perhaps because he was exposed to a recruitment attempt by Canadian intelligence before he returned to Moscow. This meant to him that he would not be appointed to any position outside the Soviet Union. That was quickly confirmed by appointing him as an assistant to the head of the Scientific and Technological Espionage Department. One of his tasks was to analyze the information contained in agents' reports to the KGB in various parts of the world. As he examined the data and its many sources, he realized that this was his chance to air his growing resentment of the Soviet regime. He spoke to the French counterintelligence service twice in the late 1980s and early 1981. When he realized that this gadget was less likely to be watched by Soviet spies, he got in touch with his French friend Jacques Prévost, an engineer at Thomson Corporation who later rose to the position of director of sales in the Soviet Union. He was offered to work for the French Secret Service and to be its man lurking in the heart of the KGB, and promised to provide the most classified information. When French intelligence personnel recruited Vladimir Vetrov, they gave him the codename Farewell, because they knew that if anything went wrong, they would search for it among the Anglo-Saxon intelligence. Farewell was communicating with his recruiters via Xavier May, a man who had lived in Moscow since 1979. He worked for Thomson Corporation as an engineer. Xavier would pass on that information and reports to the military attaché at the French embassy in Moscow, Patrick Ferrin. The French were taken aback by both the volume and, more importantly, the veracity of the information. The French were given information on how the KGB planned technological espionage in Europe and the United States. Farewell reveals that there are numerous Soviet intelligence agents listed in the capitals of Europe and America. In the year 1981, the socialist François Mitterrand was elected President of the Republic, and his arrival at the Élysée was accompanied, especially from the United States, by fears of entering communist figures in the expected government. French intelligence announced to the Soviet diplomats to leave French territory after consider them persona non grata. Because Farewell agent had dropped the mask on most of these diplomats, the French relied on what they got from their agent lurking in the heart of the KGB to intensify intelligence cooperation, in particular with the United States of America. For Soviet intelligence, what was happening resembled an avalanche. Numerous intelligence networks that had been created over the years were now slowly collapsing. After a lot of investigations, the Soviet intelligence concluded that information that has arrived to Westerners comes from agent who is at the heart of Soviet intelligence. Farewell appeared to be extremely terrified with the investigation getting underway and worried about being found out. Farewell had a serious alcohol addiction problem. February 22, 1982, when intoxicated, he allegedly attempted to kill his lover, and during a street altercation, he killed a member of the Soviet militia when the man attempted to stop him from killing his beloved. After being detained, he was scheduled to meet with the French intelligence agent assigned to him the following day, Xavier May, but he did not attend the meeting. He was given a 12-year prison term. The KGB guys kept digging to find the agent who leaked that highly sensitive information to the French, where it became clear after these leaks that the Soviets were not in the path of technological progress reached by the Western camp. Rather, they were stealing modern technological information through their spies. It was not until late September 1983 that they discovered that the spy was Vladimir Vetrov. The curtain closed on the case, and speculation spread that Vladimir Vetrov had been sentenced to death on December 14, 1984. He was shot at chief in the basement of Lefortovo prison in Moscow.